Hello, and welcome to Black Dragon Tarot. Thank you so much for joining me for this special video, which is essentially a tutorial on how I read intuitively, my method of reading. I'm trying to explain it the best that I can. This is essentially a micro course. So super mini, we'll see how long this is, but this is what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to go through every card and be like, this means this, that means that, these are the correspondences, but I'm going to kind of show you how I use that information, if I have it, and incorporate it into readings. So it's really, I don't know if it's a unique method, but I think the explanation will be found useful by both beginners, the absolute beginner, and an advanced practitioner of tarot. But with that being said, there is, like, for the absolute beginner, I just wanted to, this is going to be rapid fire, very, very quick, kind of like the basic layout of the tarot. I am going to read a little bit because I took notes, but essentially, the tarot is composed of 78 cards. 56 of them are minor arcana, 22 are major arcana. The word arcana is Latin for mysterious or specialized knowledge. Let's see, we have, and I'm going to talk about correspondences and what they mean, but we have the physical plane, which is kind of like the magician, high priestess, empress, emperor. The mental plane, which is psychological, justice, hermit, wheel of fortune, strength. Spiritual plane, which is the star, the moon, things like that. Super quick again, we have court cards, similar to a pack of playing cards. So there are the king, queen, knight, page. Page being someone who's young, naive, kind of the student, immature, innocent, that sort of thing. We have the knight, which is ambitious, optimistic, a dreamer, lacks foresight usually. The queen, someone who's responsive or receptive, mature, spiritually inclined, creative, inventive. And then the king, someone who's more extroverted, authoritative, mature, communicative, and articulate. Yeah, that's all I'm going to do about that. So what's going on? I'm going to explain what's happening when we do a reading, when we're selecting cards. You have your cards here. There's a lot of different ways people choose cards. So they would shuffle, however, you could riffle shuffle, which I don't do. You could split the deck or just kind of lay them out like this and choose cards. That's entirely up to you, and I wouldn't think too much about it. I usually shuffle until a card pops out, or whatever. Like this one popped, and it's the Four of Cups, right? So anyway, I think there's three kind of planes, or probably more than three planes, but three levels. And what I like to do is weave them together. I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. I'm sorry, I'm all excited. I thought of doing this very randomly in the middle of a workout, so if I seem jittery, I am. So right, we get a card. Usually there's a spread or question involved. Not always, though. So let's just say we chose a deck and we pulled a card. And I do have a couple cards out here. So you pull a card. Because it's the tarot, there are some inherent meanings, and I'm actually going to write it down. Correspondences. Hopefully I spelled that correctly. Correspondences, and hopefully you can see that. So, and when you take a tarot course or a tutorial on YouTube or online or whatever, this is what most of beginners are looking for. They want to know what the card means. What is it? What is it? Just tell me the meaning of it. And that could be found kind of in the card. So regardless of what deck you choose. Let's see, I have a few other ones here. The images are different, right? I'll put this one up here. The images are very different, but there are certain meanings within the card regardless of what deck you use. So we have a number. Let's just put number. And you could learn about numerology. These numbers can also be tied to a lot of different things, really. The Kabbalah, things like that. We have an element, earth, fire, water, air. That's in every single card in the deck. And then we have, don't worry, it gets interesting towards this part if you bear with me. But this is just kind of what's in the card. Okay, and your understanding of that will depend on your own knowledge, how much you've studied the tarot and what it means to you. But then we have the zodiac sign and or a planetary correspondence. So in this case, we have Aries and the sun. So it's the sun in Aries. And I'll go into what it means, like if you don't know this sort of stuff, but I'm going to skip that for right now. There's a lot of correspondences. You could say, like, sometimes there's angelic correspondences, maybe not so much the minors, but you can. Angels. There's the Kabbalah. I'm just shorthanding it a little bit. So there's a certain path that's associated with, different correspondences. So in this case, it would be Binah, the Three of Wands, the Lord of Established Strength. And there's a lot. And this is what you would want to learn, because this micro reading or this micro video is a course about reading intuitively, and intuitive meaning you know without knowing. So you might not know these, or you might know what they are, but you don't really understand the sign placement. So for example, if you don't have any Aries placements, or it's an Aries, but you don't really know what that energy is like on a personal level, you can't really relate to it, that gets covered. These get covered when you don't know that information. So what happens now? Well, you look at the card. The card itself has an image on it. And that image usually has different colors, symbols. Again, the number would probably be on there, but colors, there's like images in the foreground and background, or background. And the placement of these images will change too, because something interesting happens if you use the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck and you take the image of the Kabbalah and you put it on the deck, you'll notice that the placement of certain symbols can be closely related to kind of relevant Sephira. That's more advanced, but that's something you might not know. And that's just something to keep in mind, like where the image is placed, what's going on. It's kind of like an artistic analysis of what's happening. We have these two images take up half the picture. They are at the bottom. What does that mean to you, And again, as you study the tarot and really this sort of spiritual stuff, that meaning might change. So the bottom might be associated with earth. It might be associated with the underworld. If you're into shamanism, it could be associated with a lot of different things, and that changes depending on you, the reader. But I wouldn't get too fixed on that. This is what happens, right? You'll pull cards, and sometimes, especially beginners, they'll get locked in. So we have this image right here. They're locked in to I forgot what this means. I don't know what it means. And you're trying to remember the planet. You're trying to remember some of the other attributes, planets, the sign. I don't remember that. Maybe it's blocked for a reason, because it's not as relevant to the reading as either the imagery on the card or this part. Your personal experience database. That's kind of where things get a little more interesting. But let's stick to the image for right now. And we're going to compare these two images on these cards. Right. So the meanings are all the same. It's still Sun in Aries. It's still the number 3. It's still the element of fire, which I'm not going to cover again because that would be something you would learn kind of on your own. Of course, if you want me to do a future video about all these correspondences, but I deliberately left it out because I know this is what everyone wants to know, and you'll completely miss out on specifically this part. This is where my readings become intuitive, and I connect all of this to this point. So this is the focus, not this stuff. But again, all that stuff's inherent in the cards, but look at how different these images are. And when you do a tarot reading, you selected a deck. Like, for whatever reason, you wanted to choose that particular deck. And so I think a big point is to just look at what's in front of you, and use that imagery. And especially if you find that these are blocked, they're not as relevant, as important. And you, again, can describe energies that relate to this without even knowing what they are. That happens all the time. So let's just look at some of the differences in these images. One person's meditating alone. It feels very bright, very orange, yellow. That can, that means certain things. Maybe I'll elaborate a little bit later. These colors are a lot more muted, and there is water in this image where this is a desert, a complete opposite. And sometimes people can get confused. But if I was using this deck, this is the image I would use, right? So no water. Maybe the emotions aren't involved at all. And look at how at peace this person is. Like they're fine with it. They are where they are, and they've accepted that. They're in their own little bubble. And they're meditating, which is a card that you would really, if you know the tarot, this feels almost like 4 of Swords, but it's described in the wands. So wands meaning 3 of clubs. Again, like a lot of times in different decks, they'll call it something else. So that's why, like, usually in a guidebook, or you can know after a while that the clubs mean wands, which means fire, but it's kind of making peace with that fire. And you'll notice that the solar plexus is lit up and literally expanding. So this person could be, and this is where I'm reaching. I'm going here now. So I'm looking at this imagery, and I'm drawing this conclusion that maybe they're a medium. Knowing that they're a medium doesn't come with the deck at all. It barely comes from the image, and there's no correspondence that alludes to mediumship. But I'm thinking of it for whatever reason. I'm thinking of a medium. I'm thinking of expanding the power, which is something that mediums often do. This is that part of the meditation in that practice where they are reaching out to the spirit world and asking spirit to come close to, make that communication. Whereas this is much more relaxed. There isn't that kind of focus. And even with the moon being prominent, which is the complete opposite of the Aries sun. So if, for example, in this case, you're trying to remember the correspondence, but you just don't, it's because there's a moon there. And I think, you could consider it your spirit guide, or your own intuition is leaning you towards the moon. And because there's water, that usually signifies more of an emotional experience and an intuitive, I guess, circumstance or whatever, but there's friendship, there's love here. And I think that usually overrides this stuff. But let's get back to this personal experience stuff, right? So I'm going to put these cards back for now. And let's say, personal experience is your own connection to the images, the numbers, and it allows your mind to kind of wander a bit. This is kind of like when you're daydreaming in the middle of a reading. So if I see the beach, I don't know anything about wands or Aries or whatever. I just see the beach. I live by the beach. I'm very lucky. And I love being at the beach alone. And I'm just telling you that because it's my experience of the beach. I go alone. I don't have this. And I might daydream of sharing that experience with someone, holding hands with someone, walking the beach. Why am I saying this? Because depending on the question and the reading, there could be this longing for connection. That could be something you're daydreaming about. Interestingly enough, daydreaming is a relevant part of the Three of Wands. It's expectations manifesting. And so the fact that I'm sharing that could be something that maybe your client is looking for. They're longing for a connection. They're longing for someone who shares the same emotional intelligence and are looking for the same things in a relationship or a friendship. That's not really, I mean, in part, it's part of the correspondence, but that's something I'm drawing for myself, my experience. What does the beach mean to me? I might even talk about how the water changes day to day. Sometimes it's dirty. It's just dirty water with a bunch of seaweed. Sometimes it's crystal clear. That just goes to show how whatever it means for that particular reading, right? So I'm going to elaborate a little bit more. I know I'm excited. I don't even know what I'm saying right now. So you could consider that channeling. But in this case, we don't have as much of an image to work with. So usually with something like this, luckily these have the symbols on them, but we would focus more on this correspondence, right? On the number 3, on the sun in Aries. And usually for something like this, I'll refer more to, like, do I know someone who's got a sun in Aries? What do they act like? What is that energy like? Luckily for me, I do have an Aries sun. I didn't mean to do this, but I can understand what this energy is all about. And we'll give an example, right? Let's do an example real quick. And I want to rely mostly on this stuff. So let's say you've asked a question. What's this question? What do you want to know? What does this person think of you? That's a pretty common one. Something that I'll probably never do on my pick a card readings, unfortunately, because that's just not a subject I care much about. But what do they think of you? So for me, you have a layout, right? That's something that would be covered in another course or in a future video, but a certain layout, or you'll call it a spread, right? So I'll do like, who is this person? This is kind of like as a clarification that the person that's coming up in the reading is who you're talking about. You want to know what this person thinks of you, and we'll pull another card. This is you. This is what they think of you. We'll just do these 2 cards for now, right? This is who they are. This is who they are. It's easy to immediately think of someone who's heartbroken. I mean, the image is sharp. That's usually that's something you would find in a guidebook. Heartbreak, sadness, things like that. This is more of this stuff. So with this being the number 3, what does the number 3 mean to you? It does have its correspondences, of course. Being part of like the Holy Trinity, it's creation in a lot of ways. But we're going to skip past that. And this is Libra, Saturn in Libra, right? So that's just there. That's in the card. But and if you look at the image, of course, there's a sharp contrast. So let's just write contrast. Let's just write that down. We might go back to that in a second. That's the biggest thing I noticed is a contrast. From the top and the bottom, the foreground and background, there's blue and a sharp, deep red, which I don't want to say automatically means passion or whatever. You can think of a stop sign. You can think of the color of blood, which there is here. You could also think of something intense, something that needs attention. Let's write that down. And usually, like in a reading, I'm just saying this stuff out loud. I'm allowing myself to get lost in what's being said. I'm trying to get to this place. So the personal experience database. Let's say I know that it's Saturn, but I don't really know what that means. I don't know what it means for Libra to be in Saturn. I don't have that placement, and I don't really know, let's say, a person with a prominent Saturn placement or something like that. But if I was to say that out loud, so I pull this card, this is the person, it's Saturn in Libra, I just say that out loud, and then I think of Saturn for a little bit, and I'm not thinking of the planet for whatever reason. My mind goes somewhere else. my mind goes to the car. There's a car. I don't think they make them anymore. I don't remember the signal. It kind of looked like that or whatever. But the symbol was red, and it was called a Saturn. I think that was the brand of the car. And I remember that car because it reminded me of my grandfather. He had a Saturn. He took care of that Saturn like you wouldn't believe. He had it for at least 5 years, and it still smelled like new. There's thunder, I guess, confirmation. Oh, that's another thing that happens. If there's noise, smell that's going on in the reading, it's part of the reading. So just so you know, I guess. But I think of my grandfather. He actually, interestingly enough, kind of reminds me of that Saturn. There was a lot of focus here. He spoke with intention. I'm just gonna, whatever, you hear it. Spoke with intention, very deliberate in his actions. Deliberate. Yeah, I'm describing my grandfather. This Saturn is kind of circling back to Saturn. Do you get that? So, in a reading, I might not necessarily say all of this, that like, oh, I'm thinking of my grandfather, but I'll maybe skip that I'm thinking of my grandpa, but I'll mention this stuff because this could be an accurate description of this person, right? So we kind of just looped around, and this is a description of who they are. So maybe someone focused, deliberate, shy, reserved, closed in. In that sense, we're talking a bit more about Saturn. But we're seeing the Three of Swords. And, I see something interesting in this. Usually it's heartbreak, but I'm thinking of acupuncture. It looks scary when you see it, if you saw The Matrix or I guess anything. Or so that might be something just to mention. Just say the words acupuncture. Acupuncture. Let's pretend that's what that says. Which is a healing modality. So maybe this person is going through a breakup and they're healing from it. And just with that, we could potentially, of course, this is just an example. It's nobody in particular. And maybe depending on the person you're reading for, this description might change, right? But we already have a lot of information, and none of this information is here. We barely touched any of this stuff. This is all kind of like my own mind wandering, and this is the intuitive part of this course. Allowing the mind to wander and find descriptors that could be seen as relevant to the client. So they could be interested in acupuncture, they could be going through their own healing, they could be very comfortable in this. I think, oh, Lord have mercy, I forgot, but Libra is exalted with Saturn, or at least Libra wants to be here, which is a surprising fact that people usually skip around. So you could also see it as someone who's focused on the self, who's focused on what's at their best interest. So we have a bunch of descriptions, just based on this image, and this would represent the person. Let's choose that card for you. What does this person think of you? This is you through the lens of their experience. And we have the Devil card. Ooh, very scary, right? Usually it's very scary. Let's say these are covered up for now. We might loop back to it, we might not. All right. So it could be very easy to say, oh, they think you're evil. They think they're going to get chained up with you, or they want to avoid you or anything like that. So there's a couple things I want to mention, and we're just doing a 2-card example. I'm not going to do too much of a big spread, but this idea, there's a lot, it's tarot, there's so much. I don't want to overwhelm you too much and lose you, but actually I'm going to pause the video because my memory's going to run out. I'll be right back. All right, so I'm back. I want to try and keep this a bit short. I'm rambling a bit too much. But here we go. The Devil. And we have the imagery, and dragon is very prominent, and we still see red. Dragon. Red. And maybe they see you as someone who's drawn to their pain. I don't I don't know, but I would just say it because they have this red, and the dragon is facing towards them, so they feel like you notice them, potentially, you know. But let's go to this personal database for a little bit and see. I'm already starting to make connections between these two, but I don't want to jump too far ahead, so let's just stick to this card for now. This is how they see you. Dragon. Fitting considering my channel and my Black Dragon spirit guide. But if you look beyond the image, dragons, I mean, off the top of my head, I'm thinking of 3 dragons. The first one that came up, I'll leave last because I'm gonna, I guess, elaborate on the first one, because usually whatever your mind goes first, just start talking about it. But I'll give you 2 additional examples. I'm actually thinking of Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, who happens to be a black dragon, kind of silly, quirky, incredibly powerful. And you could start describing that dragon if that was the first dragon that came up in your mind. The other one would be Spyro, the purple dragon. Again, very playful, fun. But the first dragon I thought of actually was from Sleeping Beauty. What's her face? What's her name? Maleficent. She turns into a dragon, right? A big dragon who breathes green fire. Green fire, which is unusual. So we're kind of looping past the traditional meaning of this, and we're going here, at least in this example. Green fire is weird. And maybe they see you as a mystical creature. A shapeshifter. She was a shapeshifter. Something they see you as mysterious, powerful, intimidating. You have multiple personalities that you show maybe at work or out of work. Maybe they've met with you and they can't really put a finger on you, but they want to approach with caution. Not only because of this card is kind of scary looking, not only because you seem magical. That green fire reminds me of magic. And they don't really know how hot is green fire supposed to be. Do you know how hot green fire is? Because I have no idea. But as we connect it to the cards, we also see that this person's already gone through a lot, so they're approaching with caution. This was a very quick example. I think I'm gonna leave it here for now, but if we were to choose other cards, you know, you can always do what's the word again? An elaborate, let's just say elaborate, I forgot the word, clarifying cards. So if you could just go a little deeper than this, the same thing applies. You would go through these correspondences, look at the imagery, and go through this personal database. But what happens is all of a sudden it's like a web. That's how I see it. I'm visualizing my mind. So it's like a web. These things are bouncing off of each other. I won't choose for this because this was just kind of to see if the person was the one that you had in mind or the client had in mind. What does this person think of you? And since this is what they think of you, I'm just gonna pull more cards to clarify. This one popped out. Because it popped out, it's jumping. It's literally jumping. I think it's pretty important. But what's interesting is that it's face down when it jumps. So maybe that's something that's really important to them that you're not seeing. Again, this isn't written on the wall. And then we have these two that came out together. They popped, and I caught them. I don't want to get too far into it. It's like, oh, I caught it, so what does that mean? It doesn't have to be that serious, but we'll just put these two together and then this like this. I'm not gonna keep this going for another hour or whatever. 8 of Wands. It's funny. I'll just mention this now because I was thinking for this tutorial, this little lesson, I want the 8 of Wands to come out, but I don't know why. But here it is. Because it was face down, I would say that maybe they don't want you to know what they think of you because all these are face down. That's just my understanding of the card, usually associated with Mercury, Sagittarius and Mercury. So communication, expression, vibrancy, we'll notice that color orange, which is the color of the dragon. But, you know, even if you didn't know Mercury was associated with this, there's a ship, there's like a mystery, there's a voyage going on, and so maybe they see you as an adventure. We'll just get that from the ship, right? To another realm, and they're scared of that because they're comfortable with Saturn and closed, you know, that closed energy. A bit reserved, busy with acupuncture. You're not supposed to move around too much during that, are you? More orange, the Knight of Wands. And then the Six of Wands. So these horses, there's so much movement here. Again, if even if you didn't know there was a knight, you could see that forward moving energy. And then we have Six of Wands. So we have these numbers, right? Or do any of these numbers go together? Not necessarily. If we saw another 3, like a 3 here or 3 here, that would kind of like amplify itself, I'd say. Let's put this down. Hopefully you can see this. And this is, again, just a simple example, but one thing you'll want to know is how much wands. These are all wands, right? So there's just a lot of fire under here. They see you, again, fire-breathing dragon. They might even feel overwhelmed by your presence. And this card usually would mean, again, like if you knew the traditional meaning would kind of be like a celebration, recognition, something like that, with the wreath or whatever that's supposed to be, flowers. But even if you didn't know that, you could look at the imagery. The eyes are covered. This person is moving slow. I'm just saying these things, you know. But you would look at how these all connect. You would look at the colors and how the images face each other. So in this direction, they see you as someone who sees them. And then there's this communication card, which if you didn't know what the Eight of Wands is, again, referring to Mercury, you'll see that it's kind of weird that it's raining logs. What does that mean? And now she's carrying these logs. What's happening right now? You would just describe that. What does it mean? As someone who catches everything that's said, maybe, you know, someone who really remembers and holds on to the things that are said at the workplace. And so maybe they see you as someone who holds on to grudges, potentially. Especially, spoiler alert, this being connected to the Devil card, which is Capricorn. And I just happen to know my dad is a Capricorn sun, and he won't let go of anything for a long time. Very moody. And I'm just getting that it's like a marriage of my own experience with the sign of Capricorn, looking at the imagery and the directions in which they're going, seeing the colors, putting the numbers in, and then lightly tapping into the correspondences. But I'm not really focusing on that as much. But these were just clarifiers. So hopefully, like, this was a little mini thing, you know, the little things that you could weave in and out of. You know, these kind of connect and circle back, right? And the big thing is to, like, just say these things out loud. You could even see here that it's you're carrying the torch from the Olympics, you know, lighting the torch, getting something started that could settle into something surprisingly beautiful, lasting, and worth celebrating. But that's, again, not so much. You don't even have to know what this is to kind of see this celebration with the flowers, and there's almost a sense of urgency, and yet hesitation going on there. But hopefully I'm doing okay with my explanation. I'll probably end this here as far as this micro tutorial on reading intuitively. You know, we could even see how. Let's just pretend I used a different deck. Completely different energy straight away. I mean, even without looking at the cards, it's more dreamlike and mysterious, but with this, there's an intensity. An intensity. Potentially fear-inducing, passionate energy that was brought into this reading and is something that I would say they see as part of who you are, right? So hopefully this example was somewhat helpful. This is not meant to replace any courses, because I know, again, like Tarot Yogi has a course going on. Helen from Eye of the Serpent Tarot has a course, and they would go, probably, I don't know, but they would go more into the detail of the individual cards. I just wanted to do something quick as to how you could incorporate your own experience and using symbols and allowing your mind to wander to bring forth details that would otherwise be hidden in the subconscious. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Any comments would be greatly appreciated. Just let me know if you want more of this sort of stuff, if you have any specific questions, but otherwise I'll see you at the next pick a card reading. And don't forget to subscribe. You're already here. You might as well, right? Okay, bye. Thank you.